Try it. That do anything? Sorry, guys.
I see a record button on my screen.
It shows recording at the top with a blinking red light. Top left.
Is it recording?
It's blinking as red. I don't know if that means it's recording, but
I would think so. Well, let's hope. All right, shall we continue? Dave?
Oh, sorry. Yes, please do. Thank you. Again,
Okay.
oh my God, I knew I forgot something.
All righty. So I was saying that we are lucky to have some of the things saved. In this case, we have the Fleming Castle, or Samuel Fleming House, 1756. This was built. It is not on Main Street. It is on Bunnell Street, but I thought it was worth mentioning since it is the oldest house in Flemington, and Flemington got its name from Samuel Fleming. So. All right, this is a brochure that I worked on with the Flemington Community Partnership. And it's a walking tour brochure. It's online. So I encourage you to get out there and take this, take a walk, and also be looking for walks that we do along the way. I think everybody has a part of history that they like. And for me, it's buildings. Some people like genealogy, some people like the Civil War or the Revolutionary War, but I love buildings. And the only way you really get a good look is if you get out and take a walk. So I encourage you to do that. All right, so you can see here on our map, up in the right-hand corner is the Hopewell House, which I just talked about, that is now gone. And you can see East Main Street was called Branch Street. And actually, North Main Street, going the other way, was the Clinton Road. So the names of some of the streets have changed. So we're gonna head down now towards the Presbyterian Church. And right in front of the Presbyterian Church is, oh, and by the way, that map that I just showed you, that's 1873. The other one was 1883. And these maps, I think the 1883, actually, the Historical Society, you can buy it. And I believe Hall of Records has it up on their wall too, if you want to go and take a better look at it. So here we are at the Soldiers Monument, and it was dedicated on Memorial Day in 1892. And it originally commemorated the soldiers of the Civil War. It was a tribute to them. And when I went looking for a picture to put in my presentation here, I found this one. And I got such a kick out of it because it's a 1909 advertisement for the Ferran Foundry. And the Ferran Foundry made all kinds of cast iron products. They made fire hydrants and manhole covers, and they even made the lampposts for New York City up until the 1940s. And so it just was an interesting kind of picture. You don't think of, I would have loved to know what the text of the advertising was, but I have no idea. So if you look in the background, you can see a stone wall, and you can also see a house with like a conical top on it. So just kind of keep that in mind as we continue on. Here's what it looks like today. The monument has been expanded to as a tribute to all wars, and unfortunately the iron fence is gone, And I'm sure some of you remember when you could go both ways in that part there in front of the Presbyterian Church. It was great to cruise back down Main Street and then back around the South Main Street Circle and back again, back in the 60s and 70s. And we'll see other postcards. Postcards of local scenes were very popular. So here is that house that was across the street with the stone wall. And the name of this house is Rose Lawn. And it's a Queen Anne style. Originally, it was 3 houses put together. 2 were actually brought to the site. And it belonged to William Emery. And Emery made his fortune in retail, starting in New York City and later Kansas City. And he was also one of the largest stockholders in the Lehigh Valley Railroad. And so he came back to Flemington. He was a Flemington boy, and he came home to retire and built this lovely house. So here is a photo of the inside, and all the paneling and molding was hand carved. And I put this photo in because I wanted you to be aware of a resource called HABS drawings. And HABs are Historic American Building Survey. And this was a part of during the Depression, they wanted to employ photographers and architects and artists. And so they sent them out, the government sent them out to take pictures of some of the historic houses in each town. And this was one of the ones that they did photograph. There's several others too. And it's an online resource. I think it's the Library of Congress. I do at the end, I had to have some links for you, but it's a great resource to look back at what some of these houses look like. And I kind of get a kick out of this photo because you can actually see in the one back corner there's the ironing board and the photos of the family. So, it's a moment in time. So here's what the back of the house looked like. One point, it had beautiful, beautiful gardens back there. And this is what it looks like today. I guess we're fortunate that in the 1970s, in the 1970s, the original plan was to knock this house down and build this brick building. But people compromised, and at least they kept the streetscape, and that building is tucked in behind, and they did keep the beautiful stone wall. It's still there. So we can be lucky that some of it is left. So this house is just on the other side of the monument, sort of going up North Main. But I bet you've never seen that house because it's a federal style brick house. Nothing very terribly exciting about it, but this is what it looks like today. And if you look again, can you see the brick chimneys? And so hidden in there is it's the Kapner Broadhead House, or I believe it's also 1 Main Street. And, we often don't, we remodel our houses and we don't think about people remodeling houses back hundreds of years ago, but that's what they did here. It was an old style. They spruced it up. They put the little thing there, the beautiful columns and the carport on the side, the porte cochere for, you could drive your wagon in there and hop out right onto the porch. So, and it's a beautiful, beautiful house. this area is kind of interesting right there by the monument, because we believe that that's where Thomas and Esther Lowry had their store. And the Lowrys were big supporters of George Washington, and they helped raise money for him, and they had a store here in Flemington. And Esther was Samuel Fleming's daughter. So she, was a hometown girl. They, the Lowrys, after they lived here in Flemington, they moved out to Milford, and that's where I live now. And they built a beautiful house along the river, and which is still there today, fortunately. It did have a fire quite a few years ago, but it's been restored. So the Lowrys got around. So we're gonna move down Main Street, and you can see right at the very top of our map here where the house was that we were just talking about. And now we're down at the corner of Kapner Street. And you can see that blue building there. And these maps are wonderful also. These are called Sanborn maps. And this one happens to be from 1902. And they were insurance maps. And they were done for lots and lots of towns. And so you can really see what buildings were there through time. I think they start in the 1800s and go up to like the 1920s, somewhere in there. Princeton University has a big selection of them, and they're all online. You can go on and look at anything that you like. So here we are, and you'll notice the blue building, and then right below it is a pink building, and it says Lake Hotel. And then if you go a little bit further down, you'll see another big kind of a yellow building that's long, and that yellow and pink, and that's the County Hotel. So this building happens to still be there. It's on the corner of Main and Kapner. It's called Kapnerhurst, and part of it dates back to the 1760s. It's stucco over stone. You can see the carriage houses in behind, which have been preserved and adaptively reused as offices today. So a nice building. Some of you, I believe at one point, Ted Merritt was the one who restored this, and he was involved with Turntable Junction and Liberty Village. So, and he really got into restoring some of the buildings in town. On the other corner was this building, the Lake Hotel, long gone. So it was built in 1896, and it was added on in the rear. And by 1902, it had electric lights, and only a small section survived into the 1920s. And you will see this sometimes without the porch on it. It didn't always have that beautiful porch. But I get a kick out of this photo, like everybody came out of the hotel to be in the photo. And it looks like it was a pretty nice, beautiful, beautiful day. This is what's on the corner today. There's Kapnerhurst, you can see it there, and the post office. So that's what replaced the Lake Hotel. Further down was the County Hotel. And again, sometimes you see this one without the porch on it too. And I like the rather large gentleman standing next to the lamppost there. I think there's one other person up on the top level, and the dog in the street. And if you can kind of look behind the dog, you see a stepping stone. That would have been where, if you got out of your carriage, instead of having to step down too far, you could step on the stepping stone. And notice in all these old photos, the streets are you know, they're not paved. They're all dirt. So if you can kind of imagine that, you know, it was not a pleasant place to stroll through. This is what's there today. Unfortunately, two beautiful hotels are gone, and we have you know, Newmarket and another probably 1920s building. There was a movie theater along here too. And for a while in the sidewalk, and I think it was right by where the Singer store was, in the sidewalk, it said County Hotel. You could walk by there. And but when they redid the sidewalks recently, that was taken out. And I was happy to see that they took the whole piece out and didn't, you know, they didn't cover it up. I don't know where that piece went, but it was saved. There is a little bit of the County Hotel still around. If you go in the parking lot behind Newmarket, you will find this stone. And I believe it says County Hotel. The first part is hard to read. Hotel is easier to read. And it's buried under the bushes there. And I believe it's that stone, that stepping stone that was out in front of the hotel. I think they must have just dragged it in the backyard and nobody wanted to get rid of it, but it is still there. And I had read about it. And so I went and took a picture, and sure enough, it was there. So now we're gonna pop across the street, and this is the Town Clock Building at 54 Main, built in 1874. And sometimes it's called the Ray Building or Ree. He was George Ree was a clock and watchmaker. And this was also an early home of the Flemington National Bank and Green's Drug Store. And I noticed in this particular photo, and it's something to look in some of the other ones, all these buildings had shutters. And the shutters were used not like we have shutters today where we just have them to look pretty. The shutters were used, you know, to block out the sun or to or unused rooms or whatever. So you'll notice in a lot of the buildings, the shutters are closed. This is the building today. It's very nicely been restored. And last night I was looking on Facebook and I saw this beautiful photo. And so I had to pop it in to my presentation. This was taken by Dave Norton, who he and his wife now own the building on the corner that says The Corner, and that's Bloomfield Avenue. And what's great about this photo is not only can you see how beautiful the building is, but you can see the clock. And a lot of times the clock is kind of hard to see from down on the street. I don't think, it doesn't look to me like it has any hands, and I know it doesn't work anymore, but maybe someday that would be a wonderful thing to get working again. So if you look off to your left, you can see the clock building, but then here is a building that is gone, and this is called Blackwell's Row. And it was owned by J.H. Blackwell, who at one point was the county clerk also. And it became the Flemington National Bank later on. It moved into its own building 1897. And I just, you know, they were stores and homes above. And I think, I can't say for sure, but if you go on Bloomfield Avenue and tuck behind, like across the street from Stryker's, there's an old shed or a building there that I think might have been part of this, but I have no evidence of that other than my nosy peeking in behind buildings. So here's another great shot because you can see a lot of different things here. You see the clock building, you see Blackwell's Row, you see the next building where it says Allen's Drugstore. That's Higgins Newsstand and the little alley that goes down there, the Union Hotel, and the Fulper Store, which I think most recently it was an antique store. It was Blair's photo and furniture store for many years. And unfortunately, it is one of the buildings that's going to be lost to the development downtown that's coming. I did want to tell you, Marfi Goodspeed, who does wonderful histories of Flemington and Hunterdon County, and she did an article recently on the owners of this store. And so you can check that out on the Historical Society website. The funny thing on this picture, though, I wanted to point out, if you look up on the third floor of the hotel, you can see there's windows opened up there. And it looks to me like the bedding is out on the roof airing. I can't quite imagine with the dirt street and all that, but I can't imagine what else that is. So, something to find out more about, but I got a kick out of that. I've got several pictures here here's the bank building where Blackwell's Row was. And next to it is what would be Higgins's. And you notice it says oysters in every style. And if you've ever gone in behind Higgins's down the little alleyway there's this little red building. And they've used it for storage and things. And I just learned recently that it was an ice house is what it was originally used for. And it kind of makes sense. If you're going to serve oysters and ice cream, as the sign says on the store, you need to make sure you have plenty of ice. So, and that building is still there today. Here's another photo of the Union Hotel. Just a later one. You can see the cars. I wanted to point out that the Historical Society, I mean, we've got photos, we've got maps, we've got documents, but we also have artifacts. And when I was looking for things about the Union Hotel, I came across the Union Hotel cigars. So I don't know anything about them, but it's one of those interesting things that we have. Let's see. Oh, I want to point out there used to be beautiful murals inside the Union Hotel, and they were painted by Carl Ritz and Kurt Wiese, and during the Depression. And they were paid $35 is what my research said to do their work. Early on when the hotel, over the last 10 years or so, when it was changing hands, those were removed. So they were in the safekeeping of the Historical Society for a while, and they have been returned to one of the owners of the building. So hopefully they will someday make their way back inside. I just love, I know I put too many photos of the Union Hotel, but I like this one too, because if you look on the third floor, fourth window over, this was a postcard, and somebody has just put arrows there. That must have been the room they stayed in. So I just got a kick out of that. So if you pop across the street, right across from the hotel, this is what was there. And the house is long gone. That's the county, the more recent county building that's there, and there's a drive-through and parking. But if you look way over to the right and in the corner, you see Samuel Southard's law office. And that little building was built in 1811. And Southard was quite a notable person. He was a senator, Secretary of the Navy. In 1832, under Monroe, he was part of the Treasury. He was very active in not just local government, but state and national government. Cool thing is that building is still there. And believe it or not, in 1923 through 1930, it served as the women's restroom in Flemington. The Flemington Women's Club and the Merchants Association got together, and they made it a public restroom for women. And I just find that very interesting that a building built back in 1811 has served many different purposes. Here's what it looks like today. It's still there, and you can see the building where that house was off to your left there. But it served as the superintendent of schools office at one point. I'm not sure exactly what it's used for today, but this particular picture, it's in very good shape. Sometimes it looks good, and then it kind of needs some repair from time to time. And over to the left, over to the right, that's where the county hotel would have been back in the day. So here we are at the courthouse. We've come about halfway on our journey. And so again, you will notice the street next to the courthouse is called Lyceum Street. And a lyceum was like a place where you would go and read poetry and classical works, and also the women's temperance movement often met at the Lyceum. That has been changed to Court Street there, but and where the Lyceum was actually the Flemington Borough Hall and the firehouse. If right on the corner there, if you look at it carefully and don't look at the firehouse doors and look up, you can see that it's a very old building. So here's the kind of like the centerpiece of town, the courthouse. And this courthouse was built in 1828 on the 1791 foundation of the courthouse that burned. And it's been restored to appear as it did in 1935 during the Lindbergh trial. And if you don't know about the Lindbergh trial, Charles Lindbergh was very famous because he flew solo. He was the first person to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. And he lived actually in Hunterdon County, down in the very southern part. And his son was kidnapped from their home and died during the kidnapping. And so they had the trial of the century took place right here in Flemington. Today we say that the trial of the century was the OJ trial, but this was quite the event. Reporters came from all over the world because people knew about Lindbergh from all over the world, came and stayed in Flemington at the Union Hotel. And one of the artifacts we have at the hotel, at the Historical Society, which I think is really very interesting, is a little boy. His parents were involved somehow. I don't know if they worked at the courthouse or at the hotel, but anyway, he ran around and got the autographs of every reporter and famous person that was there. And we have that at the Historical Society. And it's quite a treasure to see all the names of, Walter Winchell and all those reporters that you hear about from way back then. So when I was looking for pictures of the courthouse, I just got a kick out of this one. This is the Rockefeller family, and they had a family reunion in 1906, and they had a picture taken in front of the courthouse, and it just gives you an idea of what people looked like and dressed like back then. So next to the courthouse is the Hall of Records. And that's where you go if you want to get your passport and many other things. It now has just one entrance. Back then it had three. And in between, you can see where that little white building is. If you go back in between the two buildings, you'll see a stone building in the back. And that was where the warden of the jail lived with his family. And excuse me. And in the back of the courthouse is the jail. And that's one of those places that's fun to tour, but hardly ever open. So hopefully when we get out again, that will be a good place to go tour. So before it was the Hall of Records, it was the home of lawyers and the county surrogate on the first floor, and dentists on the second floor. And so here, I don't know if they're all dentists or lawyers or who they are, but they all came out to have their picture taken. And here's a shot of some more of them standing out on the steps. And there's a sign, you can't see it, I think it's behind one of the gentlemen there, but it said, "Fresh gas given every day and teeth extracted without pain." So I don't know. I have a grandfather who was a dentist, and I've seen some of his tools, and I can't quite imagine that it was without pain, but let's hope. So now we've gone over to the other side of the street, opposite the courthouse. And this just gives you a good look down. If you look way far left, you see the clock building. And then the building that actually under the word Hunterdon there is the police station. And then the next two buildings are gone. There's the police parking and Chorister Place. But the next building is there, this one that says furniture on it. I don't think you'd recognize it. It has like a modern kind of front on it, but it does still exist. So. And next to that is the Doric House, which is where our headquarters are, the Historical Society. And it was built in 1846, and it was designed by Mahlon Fisher. And Mahlon Fisher was a self-taught architect, and he just loved the Greek Revival style. And so he designed this house for himself and his family, and he designed the other Greek Revivals in Flemington. And they all look very similar. Actually, Mahlon Fisher went on to, he didn't live here very long. He went on to Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and became a lumber baron and built a fabulous house out there in Williamsport. that doesn't look is not even close to a Greek revival. And it looks more like an Italianate villa, I think. And so he was a hometown boy that left his mark. So here's another look at the building next to the Doric House. Baker's store. I really couldn't find much information, but on the one sign it says double dip ice cream. So I'm thinking it might have been like a 5 and dime. So if anybody knows what Baker's was, I'd love to know, because I don't really have any information on that. But I love the old cars. And so here's a shot of the Doric House. We're always, the Historical Society, it's a beautiful house, but it needs constant repair, as anybody knows with an old house. So it's one of those love-hate things with being an old house owner. Across the street from the Doric House is the Reading Large Mansion. And this is another one that Mahlon Fisher designed. And you can see kind of a similar style, different columns. I mean, we have the Doric columns. You can see here we have different types of columns. And if you look at the roof, you see the cresting on the roof. And it was just like a design feature. That is gone, but the Chamber of Commerce has done a beautiful job restoring the building. And one of the things Mahlon Fisher did, he had these black marble fireplaces, and they are in both the Doric House and the Reading Large Mansion. So, and Reading was he's a businessman. And I think Murphy's article talks some about him. And then when we say large, people often think it's because it's a big house, but that's not the reason. It was the Large family that was their last name that lived there. And they were lawyers and state senator at one point. So they were a very prominent family. So we moved down just a little bit across the street from the Doric House. And this is where the Red Vanilla building is today and the parking lot. And it's hard to imagine all those trees being there in town. But you'll notice that the house next door is this house, the Bartle Hawk House. And Mr. Bartle he owned this property for a long, long time. So this was just, it wasn't he had a previous house there. And one of the things that I read noted about him was that he came up with the idea of putting a sidewalk and shade trees in front of his house. And he was the first to do it in Flemington. And it became very popular. They did it then down by the courthouse, and then it caught on other places. So that's besides a beautiful house, it has that recognition. Here's a more recent shot of it. Here it looks like it needs a little paint, but I know they've painted it recently. If you look off to the right, you see that little brick building off by that black car. And that is an old building, and we have no real documentation on what it was. If you ask one person, they'll tell you it was slave quarters. Somebody else will say it was a carriage house. Somebody else will tell you something else. But we do know it's been there a long, long time. So here's the Methodist Church. And which is on the other side of the Doric House. And one of the things that made me laugh when I was doing a then and now is how little has changed on that church. The then and now is pretty much the same. So, and that's Maple Avenue that goes up along there. So here's an interesting shot. So this is the groundbreaking for the library. And you can see the church in the background. And Hiram Dietz, whose family made money by inventing a plow, donated the property. And I happened to notice in this one photo, they've got a plow there. And I can't imagine what they're going to use that for at a dedication, but I wonder if it was because Mr. Dietz wanted to show off his plow. I have no idea, but I thought it was a funny thing to have at a groundbreaking. So here's what the library looked like early on. You can see that more recently there's a addition on the back, but this was what it was originally. The land was donated in 1910 by Hiram Dietz. And Hiram Dietz is the founder of the Historical Society. And he was a great collector of things and all kinds of things, but especially a lot of Native American objects. And so he built this building, and on the second floor was the Historical Society, I don't know what you would call it, I guess headquarters. And up there today is still a wonderful collection of Native American artifacts. And they've kind of been hidden away for a while, but we have a wonderful group at the Historical Society that is working on redisplaying those, and we hope to have that opened up to the public sometime soon. So keep a lookout for that. So here is what was where the library is today. And it was the Forker House. And I came across this because a couple years ago, I was doing a talk on houses that were moved. And it said on the back of the photo of this particular house, it said the Forker House was moved to Broad Street. And I think I know which house it is, but I really, again, that's one of those things I couldn't find any real documentation on. So if anybody knows for sure that any information, I'd love to know that. But you can see it here in two pictures before the library was there. And you'll notice that this is the Dietz building here that Mr. Dietz built. And it's a beautiful, beautiful building. It had 8 chimneys, and they've done a wonderful job restoring it and making it usable today, because they were able to put an elevator on the back that you never see, but yet makes it a modern usable building. And here's a shot of the library and the Dietz building. And what you'll notice is the Dietz building is back a little. I mean, I'm sorry, the library is stepped back a little bit from the street, which makes for a lovely garden in the front. But the reason for that was Mr. Dietz's office was up on the second floor of the Dietz building. And he wanted to be able to look down Main Street. So he said, I'll donate money and I'll donate land and so forth for the library, but you have to put it where I want it. And so that's why today the library is set back from the street, which really worked out quite well. Here we are on Mine Street, and it's just off Main. And this is Fulper Pottery. And it's possible that part of this building is still there. I took a good look, and I have to go back again. But basically, this is where there's a telephone company building there on that lot. But the pottery was right here on Mine Street, just on the corner of Mine and Main. And later on, Stengel Pottery, it became Stengel Pottery, and that's down on Stengel Street, where the Bluefish Grill is, and all that is where the Stengel Pottery moved later on, or Fulper. But I wanted you to notice the houses in the background there. And Flemington has wonderful, wonderful residential architecture. And I really didn't get into too much of that today. And I was thinking about it, that I'm skipping over some beautiful, beautiful homes. And so that'll have to be a lecture for another day. But I wanted to point out these houses because they're just beyond the Fulper factory there. And the one with the striped awnings, they moved that to build another house. And I think that house is over on Park Avenue, and just on the corner where Bunnell Street comes into Park Avenue, because that porch with that rubble stone like that, there's a porch on that house. So I suspect that it might be, this house might have been moved there and enlarged, and that porch reused. But I wanted the brick house with the mansard roof was modernized too. And it's the clothing mansion, or today it's offices, but many of you probably know it as the clothing mansion. And so that's what it looked like. And that's what it was modernized into. If you ever went in there, there's beautiful mirrors and marble fireplaces and a staircase, and that did survive. So we're getting to the end here, and this building is cut glass, and it opened in 1908 in the former Beecher Diamond Basket Factory. And 6 generations of Muller family ran this business. And this, along with the Stengel, was, people came to Flemington. It was a destination. They came to cut glass. They came to Stengel Pottery. They came to Flemington Fur. And, most of these are gone. And so this being one of our lost buildings was demolished in 2016. It was supposed to be, I believe, townhouses were going in there, but it's been a few years and nothing seems to have happened. But not everything is lost. So I wanted to point out this building. This is the Central Railroad Station, which would have been just across the street from cut glass. And I know it's hard to believe, but Flemington had 3 different railroads and 3 different stations. And in 1889, 54 trains a day went through Flemington, both passenger and industrial. And so it's too bad we don't have those trains today. I think they would be an asset to Flemington. But the train station is saved. It looks quite nice. It's been restored as a bank. And so we can be thankful for that. I know at one point it was a restaurant. It's been a lot of things, but we did save it. So we have taken our journey down Main Street. I thank you for coming. There's so many more buildings we could look at. And even to me, some of the things off Main Street are so interesting. A few years ago, we did a walk where we went off Main Street and went to other places. So thank you for coming, and get your walking brochure and take a tour, and come visit us at the Historical Society when we are opened again. And so I don't know if there are questions. I guess, Dave, you take it back over and
Don't
handle
forget
the
the chat questions.
Yes, I'll read through the chat questions for you. And if anybody has any questions, please add them to chat. I'll read through them and share along. So bear with me for a second as I work my way up. Janice, I still let you run in the show here. What was the population back then for Flemington versus now?
I don't know statistic wise, but Flemington has always been 1 square mile, the hole in the donut, with Raritan Township surrounding it. So I doubt the population has really changed a whole lot other than the apartments that are on the edge.
You know, actually, I'm sorry. Somebody answered that further on.
Aha!
In the 1880 federal census has 1,751 souls. Flemington born. The estimate in 2014 was 4,683. So thank you, John Allen, who answered that.
Thank you.
78 Main, somebody commented 78 Main Street, where Camp Flemington is currently, is being preserved.
Yep.
Other questions I've had here. Somebody noted, Ruth Hundley noted that her dad flew with Lindbergh out here in St. Louis, Missouri. So that's kind of neat.
We have lots of Lindbergh stuff in our historical society.
Carolyn Davis, thank you. She noted that my mother and father, William and Edna Davis, William I and Edna Davis, were jailed in Matron and lived in the jail in the late 1930s.
Oh, wow. That would be interesting to know more about that experience. If they lived in that house.
Yeah, right. Rosemary, her name's cut off, her last name, but she says, thank you. It's a wonderful presentation. Any idea why people stayed at the hotels?
Why they stayed, or?
Yeah, why? I guess why would they come to Flemington and stay here?
It was the center of everything. It was the county seat. So, you know, any kind of court proceedings would have gone on there. It's where all the shopping was. I know, you know, that's a whole nother lecture too on, you know, what all those stores were. You know, there was, the ShopRite was downtown at one point, you know, into the 50s and 60s probably before, you know, those stores moved out to the highways. Yeah, so, but I imagine it was more, you know, court kind of business, and also, you know, it was a main road through, you know, to other places, to Trenton or New Brunswick or points north. So.
There's a question, and so a lot of times, I'm sorry, the names are cut off. Is the weather vane on the courthouse original to the building?
I can't say for sure, but I think it probably is. That's a good question. That's something we should check out.
Somebody would like to know why the bill was called the Clothing Mansion.
Oh, it was a clothing store. That's why, and a very creative name for it. You know, I'm not sure what, you know, that's just what I knew it as in the, you know, 1970s. I think is what maybe early 80s. It was a really nice men's clothing store.
Another note, J.W. Priestley removed the Parker House. He also built the Holcomb Fisher Funeral Home on Main Street.
Correct.
Okay, there we go, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And was the wealthiest man in East Anglia Township in the 1870 census. I suspect that's John Allen that wrote this. Because we've talked.
Hey, we gotta keep him on, on staff.
And Priestley's portrait is actually in the funeral home.
Ah, well, see, I learned something new.
Do you know why a hotel in Flemington would be called the Lake Hotel?
No, it doesn't make it. I think it was probably the name of the family that ran it because there was certainly no lake nearby. So I imagine it was the owner's name.
You hear that? I said,
Oh, sorry.
John
Somebody know that?
Actually, what's that?
owned it, and he was also the sheriff.
Aha. John Collier tells us that John Lake, did I get that right? John Lake owned the hotel.
Aha. All
And
right.
he's also the sheriff.
Doing double duty. Huh?
City of Rome in Franklin Township.
And he developed the city of Rome.
Tried.
Tried to develop the city of Rome in Franklin Township. Joseph Purcell, I can read your name. Thank you. He wrote, I did the Guggenheim estate at the Nassau County Photo Archives. Included is the time Lindbergh stayed there after 1927 fall tour to 40 states. And this was paid for by the Guggenheims. Was one of the hotels called the Mounts Hotel?
Well, that might be what it says on that stone. I'm not sure if it's Mounts or County. It's so worn off, but I have heard somebody say that before, that there was a Mounts Hotel. Although I don't think I saw that on any of the maps, but
Same as the-
it would have, if it was the same as the county hotel, I believe.
Okay.
Although I can't say for sure.
Harold Bloodworth named it the Clothing Mansion.
Oh, yes, that's right.
All right.
Somebody knows something about it.
Yeah, I know. Between us all, boy, we've got this town covered.
I got the experts there. You got Charlie and John Cool.
I could shed, if you're interested, I could shed a little light on the clothing mansion.
Sure.
That was moved from what was the original Fulper Pottery area. It was that original part of that house was moved to where it is now.
Sorry.
And when I was a boy, Mr. and Mrs. Craig lived there. And Mrs. Craig was a Fulper descendant, a daughter or granddaughter, the owner of Fulper Pottery. And Fulper eventually got an artisan fella from, I believe it was Austria, by the name of Martin Stangl, as the man who did a lot of the pottery work and made a lot of the innovations there. And eventually he succeeded the Fulpers, hence the Stangl pottery. But that house was originally owned by the Fulper family, and Mr. and Mrs. Craig, who lived there when I was a boy, she was their descendant, either daughter or granddaughter. And if you know the Little brothers who have the liquor stores here and used to own Jake's Restaurant, why, they are grandchildren of those people. So they're still in the area, your descendants, for what it's worth.
I suspect we have the makings of a wonderful symposium someday with all the knowledge of Flemington that we have.
Yes, I think so.
Let's see if anybody has any other last moment questions. I'll make sure I didn't miss anything real quick. There's a small stone house on East Main Street next to the old synagogue. Is that one of the oldest houses in town?
Yes.
I believe so, yeah, that would have been an early house. There doesn't seem to be much documentation on it though, but.
Comment from Dennis Bertlin. The old photo of Kapnerhurst depicts a second-story door on the gable end, indicating the part of the building was a storehouse slash merchant often combined their stores and residences. Somebody wrote Mount Hotel and County Hotel are the same place.
Yep.
Okay. Where would the very large Rockefeller family have held their reunion?
I think they did it at the courthouse. I'm not sure, actually. Maybe at the hotel. I don't know. I just know they had their family portrait taken there on the.
And I can actually fill a little bit of that story in with my workings in East Amwell. They came here for a reunion because the first Rockefeller descendant to come from Germany to go to the United States actually settled in the Rocktown section of East Amwell. So the story was in the New York Times in 1906 that they loaded up on the buckboards and they went down to where he would have been. And along the way, they stripped a peach tree, clean. They climbed out of the buckboards and ate what they thought were Rockefeller peaches. So, John wrote, I think Lowry's store, once standing where the statue is now, was the target of the British 16th Light Dragoons raid that ended with Cornet Geary's death.
Yes.
They were looking for munitions.
Yeah. And somebody else wrote, an awful lot of buildings seem to have been moved around town, which would make an interesting story.
Yes.
All right. That looks like all the questions we have. So Janice, this was absolutely wonderful. Next time it's going to take me 3 times as long now to walk down in Flemington because I'm going to stop and look at everything, you know,
And I only told you half the stuff, so.
We'll have to do the other half one. Okay. Thank you so very much.
Oh, I want to thank everybody for coming. And I just want to say one other thing. If I use somebody's photo other than the Historical Society, thank you. I love when I see a fun photo or an interesting photo of Flemington, I borrow it. Thank you for coming.
Everybody.
Thank you, Janice.
We appreciate everything. You got every wonderful job. Thank you all for coming. If you're not a member, please visit our website, 100inhistory.org, and become one. Have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. Thanks, and we hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.